Welcome back everyone to the third episode of the series Behind Papers, where we try to explore how research is conducted and what is the background of research, and going through different strategies and the methods that are used, and also how data are understood and put together to the final product, which is like the research article. So in the first and in the second episode, we went through the background of research and we explored quantitative research. So if you missed that, please check the previous videos that I will link down in the description box, because it's helpful to understand those arguments before heading to the third episode, because I'm trying to make a series where we first explore the theoretical part, which is a bit boring, I can understand that, but then it's useful to then explore together some research articles and like put in practice what I'm saying right now. This third episode, as the second one, is going to be divided into parts. The first part is basically the same as the second episode. In the first part, we are going to explore what qualitative research is and how we can conduct that. And we will explore some preoccupations towards qualitative research, critiques, and the criteria that we use to consider whether our research is properly conducted or not. And in the second part, we will go through samples and a couple of methods that are specular to the previous video. So we will go through interviews and questionnaires. So if you want to know more about qualitative research and what's the background of it, please keep watching the video after the intro. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Annette and I'm here to help people to elaborate an independent interpretation of reality and trying to understand together how spirituality is integrated in our everyday life. As we said, for quantitative research, qualitative research is a strategy. It's like a frame that tells us how we can conduct research, which of course has its own theoretical background that we are going to explore in a bit, a way to conduct research that has its own characteristics. So let's dive into them. First of all, qualitative research is not based on numbers and measurements as quantitative research, but is based on words and the meanings that we attach to reality and to those words. So we are going to collect words, meanings, so we're not going to measure reality, but we are going to understand reality through meanings, beliefs, and words. And also, differently from quantitative research, qualitative research is inductivist, so it means that we are going to elaborate theories as we go through research. So we are not elaborating our theories first that we want to test, but we just start with a research question and then we move into collecting data, understanding data, and from there we can finally create a theory. Qualitative research is constructionist, so it means that reality is co-constructed by people. So it's not something that just exists out there, but we shape reality together. And it's also interpretivist, so it means that the meaning of things is explored together. So differently from quantitative research, where there was an objective mentality, basically believing that there's an objective reality out there with its own meaning, and we can only explore that. With qualitative research and an interpretivist approach, it means that meaning is explored together and can change and being built by different people together. When using a qualitative research strategy, the first thing you need to do is elaborating your research question that is going to lead you in the process. After that, you are going to decide in which sites you want to conduct research, which people you want to interview or just like collecting data from, and then you're going to define the methods and elaborating the methods and how to collect data. Then you go out there, you collect the data, you process them, you put them together, and you try to formulate the theory and the conclusions. Of course, this process is not linear. You always go back because maybe you are formulating your theory, but then you see that you missed some data, so you go back, you collect other data, you process data again, you modify your theory, and you keep going with this circular process where you keep going back and collecting new things, change what you found. So it's not linear as we think it is, but still if we want to standardize how qualitative research is conducted, this is more or less the process. As we've seen for quantitative research, there are criteria that need to be respected in order to conduct a proper research. And there is a debate on whether the same criteria that are used for quantitative research can be used for qualitative research. And of course, everybody has its own opinion, but we can say that when it comes to using the same criteria, you can just check what I just said in the video about quantitative research and see what those criteria are and then apply them to qualitative research. But we are now going to explore the alternatives so that we can see different criteria, and which are basically what most of the people conducting research believe are the proper criteria to use in qualitative research. The two main criteria are trustworthiness and authenticity, and they are themselves also divided into smaller criteria that we are going to describe quickly right now. So the first criteria we come across is trustworthiness. That it means that overall good practice was followed, so that researchers followed all the steps, and also that the results are then sent to the population where the researcher conducted the research, so that they can give their own feedback, which is called respondent validation. And it means that they can check the work as well, so there is this exchange of information between the researcher and the respondents. So the first sub-criteria was respondent validation, and the second sub-criteria is transferability. So it means that since in qualitative research we are supposed to collect a lot of data and make thick descriptions, so we are going to get as many details as possible. This allows other researchers to compare what has been researched before with what they are observing now, because the description is so detailed, they can hopefully make a comparison, and then from there seeing whether the same results can be applied to the new research. Because also when you're going to give your conclusions, you first know that the conclusion is based on very detailed data, but also the conclusions are going to be rich of information, so then researchers can see whether the old results can be compared and found again in new research. The third sub-criteria is dependability, so meaning that researchers have followed all the steps properly, so that also when other researchers check the research, or other researchers just want to do a new research, they can see that the previous study was based on good practice and the researchers followed all the steps, so they can make a comparison in the end, or just believe in the results because they come from a proper study. And the third sub-criteria is confirmability, so meaning that despite knowing that objectivity is impossible to achieve, because first of all it's impossible also when you conduct quantitative research, but even more when you are conducting qualitative research. Despite that, researchers are aware of that, so they try to do their best and trying to leave out their personal beliefs, their personal values. So the second main criteria is authenticity, meaning that what is reported corresponds to reality. And in order to ensure that, there are sub-criteria that needs to be followed, needs to be met. The first one being fairness, meaning that the perspective of more people, and possibly all the people possible, was taken in consideration when conducting the research. So the researchers try to collect data from everybody, so that it's going to be fair, so that everybody has the opportunity to share their perspectives. The second sub-criteria being ontological authenticity, meaning that the research was also helpful for people like respondents and participants, to have a better understanding of their environment, of their reality. Catalytic authenticity, so whether the research actually helped people to change their situation. So not only that a researcher was conducted for the sake of it, just for the sake of publishing something, but also to help people to make a real change in their reality. And tactical authenticity, which is very similar to the previous one. So basically whether research actually pushed people into taking actions and being engaged and empowered by the research to change their life. Similarly, as for quantitative research, there are preoccupations towards qualitative research, and they're not critiques yet, they are slightly different. So it means that with preoccupations, we do accept qualitative research as a strategy. It's just there are some risks related to it, while when it comes to critiques, it's mostly like not agreeing with the core of qualitative research. When it comes to preoccupations, the first one is called going native. So we start from the idea that in order to know the social world, we need to immerse ourselves in this new social environment we want to study, because it's different from nature. So we can't just observe that from the outside, but we need to go there and live the same life as others, more or less, as much as we can. It depends on the type of qualitative research. But that's the idea, right? And so that we can see things from their perspectives, and we can go closer to their way of thinking and stuff like that. But the risk is that we become too involved in their way of seeing lives, like the way of people we are studying, so that we lose the perception as an outsider, the perception as a researcher, and then we can't, compare anymore. We can't have this distinction anymore, which is useful to then later elaborate data and think about data. The second one is that, as we said before, which is like a criteria actually, the fact that we need to collect as many data as possible. There is, of course, this thin line between collecting enough data, a lot but enough, and collecting too many data. The problem is that if we collect too much information, then it's difficult to make a distinction between what is really useful and what could have been left out. Of course, it's not an easy process, and of course, subjectivity is involved in what is considered to be useful or not. With practice, you come to the conclusion quicker between what we can write down and what we need to leave out. But of course, it always depends on the researcher itself. And the third preoccupation is the risk of putting too many limitations and being too rigid, because the goal of qualitative research is leaving space, is leaving freedom to respondents, is being able to change the research if necessary, if we find something different, something more interesting. So the thing is like, sometimes it depends also, on availability, whether we have enough time or money to conduct a longer research or have more possibilities to change. But yeah, the goal is to actually being able to be as flexible as possible and with less limitations as possible, because then we can really enter the space of qualitative research. When it comes to critiques, there are four main critiques. I always go back to the idea of what is knowledge. And of course, when it comes to an objectivist mind, knowledge is just what can be studied objectively, what is out there, and we cannot interpret differently from what it is, while interpretivist approach is when you actually think that knowledge is co-produced and the meanings change. So if someone has the idea that it is knowledge only what can be objectively studied, then of course qualitative research is not probably the best strategy. But yeah, so these critiques are four, as I said, and the first one is, of course, and the risk that qualitative research is too subjective. So there is too much the influence of the researcher on what is going to be collected and how things are going to be interpreted, what is considered to be important to include in the research and in the elaboration of data. So the risk is that the result is going to be basically something that the researcher wanted, something that is like the researcher's baby, but it's not really what was actually the reality that they studied. The second risk is that it is hard to follow standard procedures, because while there is, yes, a system that we need to follow, so like you need to create the research question, decide the sites and people, and then go out there, collect data and whatever, the risk is that because the researcher is going to be involved in the environment he's studying or she's studying, then we're going to create certain types of relationships with respondents, with participants. The discussions are going to be different, And so what you are going to consequently ask to someone instead of someone else. So things would be too much different. Then there is not like a standard way of conducting qualitative research. The third issue relates to the inability to generalize results. And as we saw in quantitative research, the main goal is actually to being able to generalize results so that we do 1, 2, 3 studies, and from there we can make an hypothesis, like a theory on a larger part of the population. While when it comes to qualitative research, you're going to study such a specific sample, such a specific size, such a specific case sometimes, so that the results cannot be generalized. I mean, of course, the goal of qualitative research is not really to generalize results, or not most of the time. It's actually to understand that specific case. And the fourth critique is transparency. So the fact that it is hard to record what actually happened, because while with quantitative research we have like piles of questionnaires that are all the same, or like structured interviews. When it comes to qualitative research, yes, we have as well interviews and questionnaires, so you can record yourself and then you have like a record of what you did. But when it comes to observing what happened and how you interact with people and what happened specifically, you say something in order to have this specific type of results, it's hard in that sense. So transparency is difficult to achieve when it comes to qualitative research, because it's harder to record what researchers actually do. But yeah, then of course it's a huge critique. You need to trust the researchers, and that's a whole debate we can make. But yeah, that's one of the main critiques that are moved towards qualitative research. So this was the first part of the third episode of Behind Papers. And I hope you enjoyed that. So we went through what is qualitative research, the theoretical background, what is the process of qualitative research, what are the criteria that need to be met, and what are the preoccupations and the critiques that are moved toward qualitative research. So the second part is going to be about sampling, and as we said before, in the quantitative research part, how we select respondents. And then is going to be about the type of questionnaires and interviews that are part of this strategy. If you're interested about that and you want to know more about qualitative research, please watch the second video that is coming out in 2 weeks. And yeah, I hope you keep enjoying this series, and is helping you understand more or less how research works. I would really love if you could subscribe to the channel and also activate the notification bell so that you won't miss any other video. I always remember you that I also have an Instagram page that you can check and see whether you would like to follow me there as well. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!